Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. A very warm welcome to this Monday, 13th March 2023 morning Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam discussion. Today we are reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 2, entitled The Cosmic Manifestation, Chapter 7, Text 5. Before we discuss on this verse, let's sing Jagāda Madhav. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Dhari, Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Dhari, Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana, Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Dhari, Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Dhari, Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana, Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Dhari, Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Dhari, Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana, Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Jai Radha Govinda, Radha Govinda, Radha Govinda, Shri Radhe, Jai Radha Govinda, Radha Govinda, Radha Govinda, Shri Radhe, Jai Nitai Sachinandana Gaura Hari, Nitai Sachinandana Gaura Hari, Jaya Nitai Sachinandana Gaura Hari, Nitai Sachinandana Gaura Hari, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajakacarya Shodra Sadashi Srimad His Divine Grace Shilai Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki Jai, Namacharya Shila Haridas Thakur ki Jai, प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्री वासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जय, वृंदावन धाम की जय, मथुरा धाम की जय, जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय, गंगा माई की जय, यमुना माई की जय, तुलसी देवी की जय, भक्ति देवी की जय, सामवेद भक्त वृंद की जय. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine Sarvam Shri Krishna Arpanamastu Krishne Matirastu Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we are reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 2, entitled The Cosmic Manifestation, Chapter 7, Text 5. Taptaṁ tapo vividha-loka-sisṛkṣayā me ādau sanāt sva-tapasaḥ catuḥ-sano bhūt prāk-kalpa-samplava-vinaṣṭam ihātma-tattvaṁ samyag jagāda munayo acakṣatātman. Taptaṁ tapo vividha-loka-sisṛkṣayā me ādau sanāt sva-tapasaḥ catuḥ-sano bhūt prāk-kalpa-samplava-vinaṣṭam ihātma-tattvaṁ samyag jagāda munayo acakṣatātman. Taptaṁ tapo vividha-loka-sisṛkṣayā me ādau sanāt sva-tapasaḥ catuḥ-sano bhūt prāk-kalpa-samplava-vinaṣṭam ihātma-tattvaṁ samyag jagāda munayo acakṣatātman. Word by word. Taptaṁ, having undergone austerities. Tapaha, penance. Vividha-loka, different planetary systems. Sisṛkṣayā, desiring to create. Me, of mine. Ādau, at first. Sanāt, from the personality of Godhead. Sva-tapasaḥ, by dint of my own penances. Saha, he, the Lord. Catuḥ-sano, the four bachelors named Sanatkumāra, Sanaka, Sanandana and Sanātana. Abhūt, appeared. Prāk, previous. Kalpa, creation. Samplava, in the inundation. Vinaṣṭam, devastated. Iha, in this material world. Atma, the spirit. Tattvaṁ, truth. Samyag, incomplete. Jagāda, became manifested. Munayo, sages. Yat, that which. Acakṣata, saw clearly. Atman, the spirit. Translation. To create different planetary systems, I had to undergo austerities and penance. And the Lord, thus being pleased with me, incarnated in four sanas: Sanaka, Sanatkumāra, Sanandana and Sanātana. In the previous creation, the spiritual truth was devastated, but the four sanas explained it so nicely that the truth at once became clearly perceived by the sages. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. The Vishnu Sahasranama prayers mention the Lord's name as Sanāt and Sanātana. The Lord and the living entities are both qualitatively Sanatana or eternal, but the Lord is Sanatana, or the eternal in the superlative degree. The living entities are positively Sanatana, but not superlatively, because the living entities are apt to fall to the atmosphere of non-eternity. Therefore, the living entities are quantitatively different from the superlative Sanatana, the Lord. The word San is also used in the sense of charity. Therefore, when everything is given up in charity onto the Lord reciprocates by giving himself onto the devotee. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 4.11. Ye yatha mam prapadyante. Brahmaji wanted to create the whole cosmic situation as it was in the previous millennium. And because in the last devastation, knowledge of the absolute truth was altogether erased from the universe, he desired that the same knowledge again be renovated. Otherwise, there would be no meaning in the creation. Because transcendental knowledge is a prime necessity, the ever conditioned souls are given a chance for liberation in every millennium of creation. This mission of Brahmaji was fulfilled by the grace of the Lord when the four sanas, namely Sanaka, Sanatkumāra, Sanandana and Sanātana, appeared as his four sons. These four sanas were incarnations of the knowledge of the Supreme Lord. And as such, they explain transcendental knowledge so explicitly that all the sages could at once assimilate this knowledge without the least difficulty. By following in the footsteps of the four Kumaras, one can at once see the Supreme Personality of Godhead within oneself. Before we discuss on this verse, let us offer some prayers. Om Jnana-timirandhasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhūtale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Sva-padantikam Nama Shreshtham Manamapi Shachiputram Matra Swarupam Rupam Tasyagrajam Murupurim Mathurim Goshthavati Radha Kundam Girivaram Maho Radhika Madhavasham Prapto Yasya Pratita Kripaya Shri Gurum Tam Natosmi Vandeham Shri Gurum Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Adadandastranam Dante Idam Yachah Punah Punah Shriman Rupa Padambhojam Dhulisyam Janma Janmani He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Taptakanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 2, entitled The Cosmic Manifestation, Chapter 7, Text 5. Taptaṁ tapo vividha-loka-sisṛkṣayā me ādau sanāt sva-tapasaḥ catuḥ-sano bhūt prāk-kalpa-samplava-vinaṣṭam ihātma-tattvaṁ samyag jagāda munayo acakṣatātman. Translation is, to create different planetary systems, I had to undergo austerities and penance, and the Lord, thus being pleased with me, incarnated in four sanas: Sanaka, Sanatkumāra, Sanandana and Sanātana. In the previous creation, the spiritual truth was devastated, but the four sanas explained it so nicely that the truth at once became clearly perceived by the sages. Let us try and understand this verse, each line by line. So the first line is taptaṁ tapo vividha-loka-sisṛkṣayā me. The word by word translation is taptaṁ is having undergone austerities, tapa, penance, vividha-loka, different planetary systems, sisṛkṣayā, desiring to create me of mine. So this verse is being spoken by Brahmaji. And Brahmaji is, as we know, is called Swayambhu. So he is manifested from the lotus emanating from Mahavishnu, and he is seated on that lotus that is emanating from the navel of Mahavishnu. So he is called Swayambhu. And we have the mention of the 4 Kumaras as well here. And they are also, if you look at it is mentioned in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam about the 12 great personalities, Mahajana. So Mahajana are the people who are pure living entities who have realized the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. So there is a verse in Mahabharata which says that Tarko apratishthāt shrutayo vibhinna nashau rishir yasya matam na bhinnam dharmasya tattvaṁ vetam guhayam mahajano yena gatasya pantha. What that verse means is that if we try to understand Krishna or anything that is directly related to Krishna through logical arguments, tarka vitarka it is called. So one is arguing for one, as we say in debates, the debates that happen. Debates are happening, for example, in the parliaments of all the great so-called democracies. So these debates, it is called tarka and vitarka. So debates, if one is trying to understand Krishna through debates, one will not be able to understand Krishna. The real religious principle, tarka apratishthāt, we cannot understand. Shrutayo vibhinna, we can hear from thousands of sources, but still it will be very difficult to understand the crux of what is religion. Shrutayo vibhinna nashav rishir yasya matam na bhinna. So all the rishis are called rishis because they have this different perspectives to whatever they are looking at, and they are not shy to actually express their own perspective. So their matam or their description of a particular thing will always be vibhinna, will be different. Nashav rishi yasya matam na bhinna. Dharmasya tattvaṁ nihitam guhayam. So this is the very important part of that verse where it is saying that the real truth of religious principles is in the heart, is in the recesses, which is not accessible by anyone. Vihitam guhaya. Guha means cave. So the cave is in a jungle, and the cave can be very, very deep. If you look at the cave, it could be very deep. So this real truth about religiosity is deeply hidden somewhere. Dharmasya tattvaṁ vitam guhaya. And where is it? It is hidden. Mahajano yena gatasya pantha. So how can one understand what is real religious principles when one understands what the great personalities have done and one follows in their path, whatever the great personalities have done. So this is Mahajano yena gatasya pantha. And we have these 12 Mahajans who are considered the great personalities. Starts with Swayambhu, Brahmaji, who is speaking in this verse, Narada, his Manasaputra, another Manasaputra, another mind-born son. The 4 sanas mentioned in this verse are also his mind-born sons and are also the great personalities. So Swayambhu, Narada, Shambhu. Shambhu is Lord Shiva. Kumara. So we are discussing about the Kumaras in this verse, the 4 Kumaras. Sanaka, Sanandana, Sanānanda, and Sanat. And actually the 4 Kumaras, there is a meaning to their to each of them as well. Sanaka is the most ancient. Sanānanda is full of bliss, total blissful. Sanatana is eternal, and Sanat is ever youthful. So these are the 4 Kumaras: Sanaka, Sanananda, Sanātana, and Sanat. Catuḥ-sanos as they are called. So we have this Swayambhu, Narada, Shambhu. We have Brahmaji, Narada Muni, Lord Shiva, Kumara, the 4 Kumaras mentioned here, Kapil Dev, Muni, Swayambhu, Narada, Shambhu, Kumara, Kapilo, Manu. So we have got the Manu, the first mankind, first of the mankind. Prahlada. So we have got Prahlad Maharaj, Janak Maharaj, Prahlado, Janako, Bhishma Dev, Bali Maharaj, Vaiyasaki, Shukadeva Goswami, and Vayam. Vayam is that verse is said by Yamadev, Yamraj, the god of death, and he is speaking that verse, and he says these are the 12 great personalities. So the 12 great personalities: Lord Brahma, Swayambhu, Narada Muni, Shambhu, Lord Shiva. The 4 Kumaras mentioned in this verse are the 4 Kumaras: Kapil Dev, Manu, Prahlad Maharaj, Prahlada Janaka Maharaj, Bali Maharaj, Shukadeva Goswami, and Yamraj. So we have got these 12 great personalities, and we are discussing this verse. Lord Brahmaji is talking to Narada Muni about the 4 Kumaras. So we already have the 3 Mahajans of the 12 Mahajans in this particular verse. So in the first verse, first line of this verse, it is mentioned by Brahmaji that this is the most important thing that we understand, that Brahmaji came out of the navel of Mahavishnu, and he is sitting on the lotus flower, and then he is saying tapah. He is actually performing austerity. So this is very important. This is as mentioned by Rishabhadeva in Bhagavatam. Nayam deho deha bhajamra loke kashtan kaman arate vidbhujanye tapo divyam putraka yena shuddhyet sattva yasmat brahma saukyam tvanantam. So Lord Rishabhadev mentions in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam to his sons, he says that in this human form of life, Nayam deho deha bhajam nraloke. The nraloka is when one has got this human form of life. So what Rishabhadev is saying is, tapo divyam putraka yena shuddhyet sattva. In the human form of life, one has to engage in doing austerity. Tapo divyam. And what kind of austerity is it? Divyam, divine austerity. It's not an austerity that is mundane. What do we mean by divine austerity? Divine austerity means when one is chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So when one is chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, one is doing tapo divyam. One is engaged in the divine austerity. Because initially, there might be some taste to chanting the holy names of the Lord, but there might also be places when there is no taste. So initially, as Srila Prabhupada has given example many times, that if someone is suffering from jaundice, the sweet also tastes bitter to them. So actually something is sweet, but when they taste it, they find it that is also bitter. So the cure of that is one should keep eating that, and then finally one realizes the actual taste of the sweet rather than it being bitter. This is exactly the same thing that is applicable in terms of understanding our original spiritual nature. Our original spiritual nature is non-different from the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So the vibrations of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare is what we are actually made up of. So it is non-different. So that is the energy of the Lord, the divine energy of the Lord is what we are. As Krishna mentions, Mama eva amsha jiva loke jiva bhūta sanātana manha shashtani indriyani prakriti-sthani karshati. So Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that all the living entities are my eternal part and parcels. So what does eternal part and parcel mean? That we are eternally related to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. At no point of time is our relation not there. It is always there. But because manaha shashtani indriyani, so Krishna mentions that when one identifies with the mind and the 5 senses, and the mind is called the 6th sense, prakriti-sthani karshati. So Krishna mentions that then the living entity is struggling in this material world. When one is forgotten one's original relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then one is struggling in this material universe. So therefore, Rishabhadev says, tapo divyam putraka, do the divine austerities, yena shuddhyet sattva, by which the existence becomes purified. Then when the existence becomes purified, what happens? Yasmat Brahma Saukyam Tvanantam. Then one realizes that unlimited bliss that one is composed of. So whatever so-called happiness that we try and enjoy from the senses, interaction with the sense objects, it is a very poor reflection of the original bliss which is already present, which is in association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so this is the meaning of the first line here, taptaṁ tapo vividha-loka-sisṛkṣayā. Having undergone penance, different planetary systems desiring to create of mind. So when Brahmaji has to create all these different planetary systems, he had to undergo the austerity. When he underwent the austerity, he was able to create these planetary systems. And that was through the divine grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yasyeka nishvasita kalam athavalambya jivanti loma vilaja jagadandanatha Vishnur Mahan sa ihayasya kala vishesho Govinda Madipurusham tamaham bhajami. As it is mentioned in Brahma Samhita, again the prayer said by Lord Brahma, just when the Mahavishnu is exhaling, all the universes are coming out, and all the Brahmas who are managing those universes are coming out. And when the Mahavishnu is inhaling, everything is going inside. This is the transcendental potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this Mahavishnu is called Kala Vishesho. Vishnur Mahan sa ihayasya kala vishesho Govinda Madipurusham tamaham bhajami. It means it's a portion, a plenary portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who Govinda Madipurusham tamaham bhajami. The Lord Govinda, who gives pleasure to the cows and the senses. This is the understanding of the first line, taptaṁ tapo vividha-loka-sisṛkṣayā. Ādau sanāt sva-tapasaḥ catuḥ-sano bhūt. Now we come to the next line, which says that ādau at first, sanāt from the personality of Godhead, sva-tapasaḥ by dint of my own penances, saha he the Lord, catuḥ-sana, the four bachelors named Sanatkumāra, Sanaka, Sanandana and Sanātana, abhūt, appeared. Now Brahmaji is talking about, so first Brahmaji talked about for the creation, how he was involved in austerity and penance. Now, in the second line, Brahmaji is mentioning how through the costless mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and through the dint of his own penances. So it's a combination of the costless mercy and so this is what it is mentioned. Ye yatha mam prapadyante tam sthathaiva bhajamyaham. Mama vartamanu vartante manushya partha sarvasha. As Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita, whatever way one approaches the Lord reciprocates accordingly. So here, Brahmaji, who is Swayambhu, he is coming out and he is doing tapa, he is doing the austerities. Then the Lord is reciprocating accordingly in terms of his costless mercy. This is very important, that the costless mercy is costless and it is coming from the Lord to all the living entities. But the living entities who are able to receive it, who have that, who have created their own receptory competence, then they will be able to receive the costless mercy of the Lord. Otherwise, and the example given is that of the rain falling at different places. So rain is falling equally at all the places. But the place which is fertile, there the crops grow. And the place where it is like a rock, there on the rock, nothing can grow. But between the rock, if there is some fertile place, there will actually be some kind of vegetation that exists. So this is the example given of the costless mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is being showered at all the living entities equally. So Krishna actually mentions samoham sarva bhuteshu name dveshyosti na priya ye bhajanti tume bhaktya mai te teshu chapiham. So Krishna mentions that I am equal to all the living entities. There is no one who is name dveshyosti na priya. So I'm not neither envious to anyone nor I am very dear to anyone. But ye bhajanti tume bhaktya mai te teshu chapiha. But depending on how receptible one is of that costless mercy of the Lord, one receives that mercy. So that the characteristic of something is what it is dharma, as Srila Prabhupada mentions, that in many of his lectures he has mentioned. So what is dharma? He asks a question and he says that dharma is dharmam tu sakshat bhagavat pranitam. So dharma is the codes of the codes that are described by the Lord himself and which are repeated by his pure devotees. And dharma is also the constitutional position of all the living entities. So, for example, the constitutional position of all the living entities is jivere swarupahaya krishnera nityadas. That is a constitutional position, that every living entity is an eternal servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And when the living entity engages in service, then one is in one's natural position as an eternal part and parcel of the Lord. But when the living entity is trying to forget the Lord, or going in the direction of forgetting the Lord and trying to enjoy independent of the Lord, then the one is in the state of temporary, fleeting, so-called happiness, and so-called and the distress is also so-called. This is the amazing thing about this material world. Just like this happiness is fleeting, the distress is also fleeting. It's not that one is eternally in a distressful condition. The distress will come and the distress will go. Just like the so-called happiness will come and the happiness will also go. But what remains, what is the basis of all the experience? That we are. So that is the Vedic Vakya that says Tat-tvam asi. In the Vedic Vakya, this is a very important Vedic Vakya. Tat-tvam asi. Thou art that. Aham brahmasmi. So this understanding of our original nature, which is eternal, which is it is not that at certain point of time we came into existence and at certain point of time we will die. That is for our body, and that is for our material mind and material intelligence and material false ego. The false ego is considering itself as the owner of everything. So because of the false ego, ahankara vimudhatma karta hamiti manyate, prakriti kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasha. So as it is mentioned by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that actually all the work is being done by the modes of material nature. So when there is mode of goodness, we try and engage in these discussions, spiritual discussions. When there is mode of passion, we want to acquire more and more material goods. When there is mode of ignorance, we want to just be lazy. So satvat sanjayate jnanam rajasa lobham evacha pramada moho tamaso bhavato ajnanam evacha. So this is the modes of material nature that keeps on acting on the external body, mind, and the false ego. But we are something above. Indriyani parani ahur indriyabhya paramana yo manasastu paro buddhe yo buddhe paratastu sa. As Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that undoubtedly, Arjuna, that the senses are very strong. But he says that stronger than the senses is mind. Indriyabhya param mana yo manasastu paro buddhe. Stronger than the mind is intelligence, and stronger than the intelligence is sa. So the original living entity who is the cause of our existence. So this existence in this material body, who is the cause of that? The cause is that spiritual spark that is eternally related to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That spiritual. So this is what Krishna says: Brahma bhuta prasannatma na shochati na kamshati samaha sarveshu bhuteshu madbhaktim labate param. So Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita that when one understands one's original constitutional position as an eternal part and parcel of the Lord, that is called Brahma bhuta. That stage is, so then one realizes that this body is just fleeting. It is coming and going, coming and going. Every time one is acquiring a different type of body. basing on one's desires at the time of death. Yam yam vapi smaran bhavan tyajati ante kalevaram tam tam ivaiti kaunteya sada tad bhava bhavita. Antakale cha mameva smaran muktva kalevaram ya prayati samadbhavam yati nasti atra samshaya. So Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita that when whatever one always thinks, whatever is the dominant thought during the lifetime, that particular thought will come at the time of death. Why? Because sada tad bhava bhavita. Because Krishna says that because the person's dominant thought has always been that, at the time of death, that thought will come. And when that thought comes, according to that thought and desire, the next body is coming. So this is antakale cha mameva smaran muktva kalevaram ya prayati samadbhavam yati nasti atra samshaya. So Krishna then mentions that at the time of death, if someone remembers me, smaran muktva kalevaram ya prayati samadbhavam yati nasti atra samshaya. One will come back to me. There is not even an iota of doubt. So this is the great costless mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that He is not only giving us this eternal existence, but He is also helping us to understand that this is actually the truth. So He brings us different ways, the costless mercy of all these wonderful devotees, like even in the modern contemporary times, how the Supreme Personality of Godhead brought in his Shakti-avesh avatar, Srila Prabhupada. So he is so costlessly merciful that he is bringing this transcendental knowledge to as it was foretold by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself. Prithvi te acheyate nagaradi gram sarvatra prachar hoibo muranam. So this is directly told by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, that across every nook and corner of this whole world, my name will be broadcast. And the empowered incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Srila Prabhupada, is making that the truth. This is the costless mercy of the Lord, that He is constantly bringing us back to Him. Unfortunately, in the conditioned state of existence, the living being is so obstinate that even after seeing so many different ways by which the Lord is bringing the living entity back, the conditioned living entity is attached to matter. And this is Srila Prabhupada actually mentions here. In the beginning, Srila Prabhupada mentions the difference between the living entity and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Srila Prabhupada starts the purport by saying about the Vishnu Sahasranama prayer, and then he says that Lord's name is Sanāt and Sanātana. And then he says that Sanatana are all the living entities, but the Lord is Sanatana Tama. He is the superlative Nityo Nityanam, Chetanas Chetnanam, Eko Bahunam, Yo Vidadati Kaman. So this is the difference between the Supreme Personality of Godhead Sri Krishna and all the living entities. The Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna is the chief eternal among all the other eternals. Nityo Nityanam. Nityo Nityanam Chetanas Chetnanam. He is the source of consciousness for all the conscious living entities. Eko Bahunam Yo Vidadati Kaman. So he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead who is fulfilling the desires of all the living entities. Eko Bahunam Yo Vidadati Kaman. So Krishna is Eka, the only one person, and then he is fulfilling the desires of all the living entities. Upadrashta Anumanta Cha Bharta Bhokta Maheshwara. Paramatmeti Sarcha Apiyukto Dehesmin Purushapara. So as a localized Paramatma, as the super soul in the heart of all the living entities, the Lord is overseeing the activities of all the living entities. Upadrashta. Then he is giving permission. Anumanta. He is giving permission. So if a living entity is desiring to enjoy in a particular way, and that enjoyment desire is so obstinate that by any means that living entity wants to attain it, then Krishna does not go against the wishes of that living entity. And this is the greatness of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that he does not force any living entity to come back to him. If he forces, then there is no love. The real love is when one is allowing the person whom one loves to do what they want to do. And this is what is if you want to take the crux of what is happening in this whole world, it is that every living entity has got that, has been given that freedom to do what they are desiring. Actually, the Lord is, that is what conscience is. The voice of the conscience that comes in, that is Paramatma. So when someone is trying to do something wrong, there is a conscience that comes in. The voice of the conscience. It could be very subtle most of the times. That's why it might be very difficult for one to understand that. But the Paramatma is always guiding the living entity, and the Paramatma is establishing those relationships between the living entities, so that satsangatve nissangatvam, nissangatve nirmohatvam, nirmohatve nischalitatvam, nischalitatve jivan mukti, as it is said by Sri Shankaracharya and Bhaja Govindam. So when a living entity is desiring to have satsang, what is satsang? Sat is truth, and sang is in the association. So when people want to associate with the truth, and what is the supreme absolute truth? The supreme absolute truth is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Janmadhyasya atah anvayaditaratascha artheshu abhignys swarat. So as it is mentioned in the first verse of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, everything is emanating from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Janmadhyasya atah anvayaditaratascha artheshu abhignys swarat. And the Supreme Personality of Godhead has to be known directly and indirectly. And he is independent. This is the transcendental position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Everyone else is dependent on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but Supreme Personality of Godhead is independent. Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. He is the cause of all causes. So, for example, our existence is dependent on our consciousness. So consciousness is the cause of our existence. But who is the cause of consciousness? There is Supreme Personality of Godhead. So any cause you take, the cause of that cause of the cause of the cause, we go to the final cause, the first cause, that is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's why Krishna says, Aham sarvasya prabho, matta sarvam pravartite, iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvita. So Krishna says that everything is emanating from me, matta sarvam pravartate. When someone knows this very in truth, iti matva bhajante mam, one engages in loving devotional service of the Krishna. Who is such a person? Buddha, a person in knowledge. And how does such a person engage in loving devotional service? Bhava samanvita, with full emotional intensity, full emotional connect. Because that is the only thing that we can give to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Bhava grahi janardana. Murkham vadati vishnaya, dhiram vadati vishnave, ubhayam cha samam punyam, bhava grahi janardana. So it is mentioned in the scriptures that someone might actually say Om Vishnaya Namaha instead of saying Om Vishnave Namaha. The actual mantra is Om Vishnave Namaha for Lord Vishnu. But someone might not know the grammatical Sanskrit things, and one might just say Om Vishnaya Namaha. So what that verse is saying is that even though one might not pronounce something correctly, what Krishna is looking at is what is the bhava, what is the emotion, what is the intention behind what is being said. What exactly is being said might not be exactly correct, but that is not what the Lord is looking for. So it is that humility, that surrender that the Lord looks for. Because if there is even an iota of false ego in the living entity, then it is not a pure devotional service. And that is why that state of existence where one is pure, rendering pure devotional service to the Lord, is very rare. Why it is very rare? Because not everyone can reach that stage of having no false ego. And how can one? Bahavo jnana tapasa puta mad bhavam ashrita agata. Vitaraga bhaya krodha manmaya mam vashrita bhavo jnana tapasa puta mad bhava magata. Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita that there are many great souls who have reached me. How they have reached me? Vitaraga bhaya krodha. They have got rid of raga, bhaya, and krodha. Raga is attachment, bhaya is fear, krodha is anger. How one gets rid of fear, attachment, and anger? When one is in that state of total surrender onto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So bhayam dvitiya abhiniveshadha syat ishad apetasya viparyo asmriti. So it is mentioned in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam that fear happens because one sees that there is something other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Actually, there is nothing other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because everything is his energy. And Srila Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy is achintya bheda bheda tattva, simultaneously one and different. So the example given is that of the sun, for example. Ekadesha sthitas agnir jyotsna vistarini yatha parasya brahmana shaktir tathedam akhilam jagat. As it is mentioned in the scriptures, the fire or the sun is at one place, but it distributes its heat and light everywhere else. So similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is Goloka eva nivasati akhilatma-bhūto. Ananda chinmaya rasa pratibhavit abhis tabirya eva nija rupataya kalabhi Goloka eva nivasati akhilatma-bhūto Govinda madipurusham tamaham bhajami. So the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna, in his personally transcendental divine form, is staying in Goloka Vrindavana, the transcendental spiritual realm. Akhilatma-bhūta. But at the same time, he is present as Paramatma in the hearts of all the living entities, the localized presence. So, vadanti tat tattva vidas tattvam yadjnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavan iti shabdyate. As it is mentioned in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is realized as the impersonal Brahman. Then he is realized as the localized Paramatma within the heart of all the living entities. And then he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is a person. So this is a realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And here, that's why Krishna's another name is Achyuta as well, one who never falls down. The living entities have the tendency of fall down because of their minuteness. But Krishna is Vibhu, the greatest. So Param Brahma, Param Dhama, Pavitram, Paramam Bhavan, Purusham, Shashvatam, Divyam, Adi Devam, Ajam Vibhu. This is said by Arjuna. When Arjuna sees the universal form of Krishna, Arjuna says that, "Oh Lord, you are the Supreme Brahman, Param Brahma." So if all the living entities are Brahman, then the Supreme Lord is the Supreme Brahman, Param Brahma, Param Dhama. He is the supreme abode. Pavitram, the most pure. Paramam Bhavan is the superlative person. Purusham, the first person. Shashvatam, Divyam, already eternally existing, divine. Adi Deva, he is the origin of all the other demigods. Ajam, he is unborn, and Vibhu, he is the greatest. So this is the difference. So when in the Vaishnava philosophy, one is very clearly understanding the difference between the Supreme Personality of Godhead and all the other living entities. So we are, that is the second line, ādau sanāt sva-tapasaḥ catuḥ-sano bhūt. And then the third line is prāk-kalpa-samplava-vinaṣṭam ihātma-tattvaṁ. So previously in the creation, when the inundation was occurring and it was devastated, the material world was getting devastated, then this ādau. So this ādau is the so Shrotavyadini Rajendra Nrinam Santri Sahasrasa Apashyatam Atma-tattvaṁ Graheshu Grahamedina. So this Atma-tattvaṁ is really important. What is Atma-tattvaṁ? It is the understanding that we are eternally existing and we are eternally related to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is Atma-tattvaṁ. And when that is realized, and when we are in that state of mind, then that natural attraction to the Lord is invoked. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhya Kaponai Shravanadhi Shuddha Chitte Koroyodai. So that eternal love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead is there within all the living entities. How is that invoked? When one hears about the Lord. So then, and there might be different stages of hearing. The initial stage of hearing is when, in the conditioned state of existence, one probably might not be attracted to hear about the Lord. But when one keeps hearing, the attraction will develop. It is like, even in a material sense, people talk about addiction, for example, the bad addictions. How does the bad addictions develop? Initially, say for example, if someone is started smoking, initially that smoking might not feel good. It probably will feel the worst thing in the world. But somehow or other, if one is in the company of that smokers, one will start thinking that, okay, I will also smoke. And because to be in the company of those people, one will try and imbue that kind of spirit. And then, even though one does not, though it is the worst thing in the world to experience, one keeps doing it, and then suddenly one starts thinking that this is the best thing. It is actually the worst thing, but one starts feeling that it is the best thing. So this is the unfortunate situation of the material world, where when one is in the company, so therefore the company is extremely important. So who is actually our friends? Who are the people who are our friends? It is the most important thing in the life. So if one is unfortunately in the bad company, then one will acquire those bad characteristics of the company with which one is in. And if one is in good company, the same thing applies. One acquires all the good characteristics of the people with whom one is in. So one who is in contact in. And it's quite a... So if you look at... so Hari Rasa Madira Madati Matta Bhuvi Vilutama Natama Nirvishama. It is said, Parivadato Jano Yatho Tathova Nanu Vadato Vayam na Vicharayama. Hari Rasa Madira Madati Matta Bhuvi Vilutama Natama Nirvishama. It is said by Sri Rupa Goswami. So Sri Rupa Goswami says that I don't care what others are saying. Parivadato Jano Yatho Tathova Nanu Mukharo Vadati Vayam na Vicharayama. They might say different things, but I don't care about that. Why? Because Hari Rasa Madira Madati Matta. So he's saying that because I'm drunk with the nectar of the holy names of the Lord, I will just do whatever I want to do. And so this is the transcendental ecstasy of someone who is totally surrendered onto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so if one is in a state of intoxication in the mode of ignorance, one might see the symptoms that one is not caring about anything. And in a very interesting way, the highest state of divine spiritual experience is also the same. One does not care about what anyone is thinking, because one is totally engrossed in the holy names of the Lord and in the holy pastimes of the Lord. So this is the transcendental position of pure devotional service. So that is the ādau. So prāk-kalpa-samplava-vinaṣṭam ihātma-tattvaṁ. And then the last line here is samyag jagāda munayo acakṣatātman. So here, incomplete became manifested these sages, that which saw clearly the spirit. So this is what we understand is from the four Kumaras, the Sanaka, Sanandana, Sanānanda and Sanāt. The four Kumaras, they are totally surrendered onto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And because of their surrender, they are able to give the transcendental knowledge in such a way that it is acceptable by all the living entities. That is their transcendental position. Even if someone is in a totally conditional state of existence, they have that pure potency through which they can convey that message and slowly bring all the living entities back home, back to Godhead. This is the transcendental position of the Mahajanas. So the Mahajana mentioned here are the 4 Kumaras, and their transcendental potency is what is mentioned here: samyag jagāda munayo yad acakṣatātman. So they understand this transcendental topic. So we actually see in the scriptures that the 4 Kumaras, when they were initially came into existence, they were supposed to be jnanis. They were supposed to be the people who have a lot of knowledge but not that much devotion. That is a category of the jnanis. And the bhaktas they have 100% devotion. Everything else is secondary for bhaktas. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayajita Janayati Ashu Vairagyam Jnanam Chayad Ahetuka. So this is mentioned in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, that when one is totally surrendered onto Krishna, that is the Krishna Bhakta Nishkama Teva Shanta. Bhukti Mukti Siddhi Kami Sakale Ashanta. As it is mentioned in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, that so there are different categories of living entities. So one category of living entity is what is called as karmi, or one who is after the fruitive activities. So one is doing any action so that one gets back some kind of material sense gratification in return. So that is karmi. Then there is bhukti kami, one who is always after the sense gratification. Mukti kami. Mukti is the people who want liberation. So those are the jnanis. Then siddhi kami, one who wants perfection. That is yogis. So the yogis have got all the ashta siddhi, the different types of perfection that they get. Anima, laghima, mahima, prapti, prakamya, ashitva, vishitva. So all these are different. So they can be smaller than the smallest, greater than the greatest. So the yogis can attain different types of perfections. So bhukti, mukti, siddhi, kami, sakale ashanta. It's said in Chaitanya Charitamrita that all these kind of people are unfortunately not peaceful. Why? Because there is some kind of desire or other. So a bhukti kami or the karmi is wanting sense gratification. The mukti kami, or the person who wants liberation, is wanting liberation. But and the siddhi kami is wanting perfection. But Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, "Mama janmani janmani ishware bhāvāt bhakti rahitu vedvai. Na dhanam na janam na sundarim kavitam va jagdishakame." So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's prayer is, "Oh Lord, I don't want wealth. Na dhanam na janam. I don't want followers. Na sundarim kavitam na kame. I don't want any beautiful partner. Mama, what I want, I don't even want liberation." Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says. How do we know? He says that Mama janmani janmani ishware, that birth after birth, bhavatat bhakti rahitu kitaye. Let me be engaged in your loving devotional service, O Lord. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying that a pure devotee does not even want liberation. So in the jnani state, one is wanting liberation, but in the bhakti stage, one is just totally surrendered onto the Lord, and one becomes an instrument of the Lord. So what does it mean by becoming an instrument of the Lord? If the Lord wants the living entity to take birth again, the living entity is happy. At least I can serve the Lord in this way. So it does not. That's why Narayana parasarvena kutashchana bibhyati. Swarga apavarga narkeshu api tulyartha darshana. So it is mentioned in the scriptures that when one is totally surrendered onto Narayana, Krishna, then it doesn't matter where one is living. One might be in the heavenly planet, Swarga. One might be in the Apavarga, the earthly planet. And then Naraka, one might be in the hellish planetary systems, the lower planetary systems. It doesn't matter. Api tulyartha darshana. Everything is the same for the person who is totally surrendered onto the Lord. Because one can see the Lord everywhere in the form of his energy. And the achintya bheda bheda tattva is Lord is simultaneously one and different. So this is an amazing, and this is the so the 4 Kumaras, they were jnanis. It is said they were jnanis. That means they were more in the state of wanting liberation rather than total 100% surrender onto the Lord. But when they were given the tulasi leaf offered to the lotus feet of the Lord, they became pure devotees of the Lord. It is said. So this is the transcendental position of pure devotional service. that that even the Gyanis, like the four Kumaras, became pure devotees. And we have one of the important historical accounts of the four Kumaras is that they were not allowed to enter into the kingdom of the Lord, into Vaikuntha, by Jaya and Vijaya, the doorkeepers. And then the Kumaras then said that to Jaya and Vijaya that either you can take birth as devotees for 7 births, or you can take as the enemy of the Lord for 3 births. And the 4th birth is actually hidden. Just like Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is a hidden incarnation, similarly Jagai and Madhai, the Jaya Vijaya, are hidden as well there. So then this is accepted by Jaya Vijaya, and then we see that they're born as Hiranyaksha, Hiranyakashipu, then Ravana, Kumbhakarna, then Shishupal and Dantavakra. So we see how the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is transcendentally arranging all these wonderful situations so that every living entity can understand their real constitutional position and go back home, back to Godhead. With this, I would like to conclude. If you're watching this live, please mention where you are watching from, and if you're watching this replay, please type #replay and inform. So we have these comments here from different of our viewers here. Thank you very much for your comments. Hare Krishna. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravadi Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. Sarvam Shri Krishnarpanamastu. Krishne Matirastu. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.